And welcome back, everybody. This is the 10th annual virtual residency workshop. It's Thursday, June 27th, 2024. I'm your host, Henry Neiman, and I want to welcome you. This is Cyber Ambassadors, and it's a dual session, Leading the Change, Equity and Inclusion, and Leading with Principles, Ethics. Our speakers are Karen Liston of Wayne State University and you, Kathy Chang, author of How to Lead in Data Science, and I'm going to turn the program over to Karen and Kathy.
Hi there. I think I'm going to start you off. My name is Karen Liston. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm a librarian for education, languages, international programs at Wayne State University in Detroit. Um, I'm facilitating this session because I worked at an award-winning team-based library, the University of Arizona in Tucson, and our library and various teams just included individuals of all ages, ethnicities, experiences, backgrounds, physical abilities, and walks of life. And we were constantly innovating. Well, right before I left, we were recognized as the Academic Library of the Year by the Association of College and Research Libraries. And they gave us that award in recognition of our excellence and inclusivity in teamwork. And so I'm hoping that I can share some of those strategies with you during this session. I want to introduce my colleague, Kathy Chang, who literally wrote the book on how to lead in data science. Do you want to add anything here?
Uh, that's Thank you. Very kind of you. I'm Kathy. I go by Kathy. My first name Yue means happy, and my last name Chang means always. So it's kind of rare that a last name actually means something interesting and relevant. So I am a co-author for How to Lead in Data Science, which is a guidebook for anyone who is in technology and anyone has to deal with data. I think that's everyone here. And I have spent my career expands from hardware design to software business management, product management to data science, as well as artificial intelligence. I'm super excited to be here, and I tried very hard to get my book into the library, and Karen looked it up. It's there. Awesome.
It is there.
Yes, we're looking forward to spending the next hour and 15 with you.
Ah, okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring up the slides for this and start the slideshow. Let me see. I do want to remind all the attendees at this point that you want to be sure that you can bring up the participant materials that we'll be using during this session. So you can use the QR code here or the tiny URL to bring those up. So if you want to take a minute and do that now, it'll come in very handy later and we won't struggle to kind of do it then. We'll also try to drop those into the chat, but now is a really good time. If you can go ahead and try to set that up, or if you've already got them, that'd be great. Um, let's see. I want to welcome you to the session of the Cyber Ambassadors program. And this particular session focuses on building self-knowledge and leadership skills regarding equity, inclusion, and ethics. And let me see. This is the acknowledgement slide for the creators, contributors, and supporters of the Cyber Ambassadors project. This was developed with support from the National Science Foundation, along with many individuals and organizations listed here. And I know we've made a couple tweaks. So,
Karen, can you go back to the link for a second? There's a couple of folks who needs
yeah.
another
Oops,
5 seconds.
there we go.
So this is your chance. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are we good? Okay, thank you for Marcelina for sending the link as well. And this will be good practice for a different concept very shortly, right, Karen?
That's right. That's right. Very good. So we do want to have just a few ground rules just to help to ensure that everybody's going to be able to participate fully, right? Be engaged. Try to keep your video on and your email off. We understand that bad bandwidth can be an issue for some of you, so you might also want to like not have people watching you eat or something like that. If you need to, that's okay. But when you're able, turn on your video to let us know that you're participating. And especially when you're in the small group work, we're going to have a couple of brief breakouts. Please try to participate with your audio and video on. Be respectful, learn from each other, but also maintain confidentiality and don't tell other people's stories. I mean, unless you've asked permission or something, but as a rule, they all knows, right? Consider when you need to really lean in and participate more, and when you should step back and encourage other people to engage more. I'm very bad about that, and I always try to tell myself, don't talk first. But people have different approaches to that, so we're all learners. And as we work through these communication, teamwork, and leadership skills, we might make mistakes. So assume that everyone has their best intentions forward and give others a chance to correct or clarify their comments. If you make a mistake that might cause discomfort or harm, take responsibility and apologize if needed. And the oops and ouch tool can be a great way to signify discomfort. If you make a mistake, you can say oops to acknowledge that. But if you're hurt by something that someone else has said or think someone else might be hurt, you can also say ouch to let the other person know that. Okay. Those are good skills in general. We're going to be doing some quick chatter check-in exercises throughout this training. And just to kind of explain how this works, I'm going to ask a question, and then I'll want you to type a brief response into the chat window, but wait to hit the enter key, okay? Because that's what actually posts your answer into the chat. We'll give you a few moments for everybody to type in responses, and then we'll do the countdown, 3, 2, 1, chat. And then when the countdown ends, everyone hits enter at the same time, and you kind of see your responses scroll through the chat window. I've also seen this called a chatterfall, and I kind of like that term. I think that's fun. So this
Karen,
is
do you
going to
want to
be,
do an exercise?
yeah,
Oh, there we go.
this is kind of going to be our practice one. Yeah. So what I want everybody to do to type your response into this question into the chat window, but wait to hit enter, okay? What do you like best about summertime? So type that brief response in there into the chat. And if everybody's ready, I'm going to start the countdown. 3, 2, 1, chat. There we go. Kathy, are you seeing anything hit your eye in the chat that
Uh, yeah, well, there's a Nicholas says I don't. Long daytime. There's fresh veggies, evenings. Some people like winter best. Warmth, relaxation, weather, driving without a wetsuit. No students in the building. Elevators come immediately, which is awesome. More daylight. I said smoothies, but I'm the only one.
smoothies? That's cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm taking sailing lessons this summer. So for this summer, that would be my thing. But all the time, our weather has been very hot, humid, and challenging here. So yikes. But we will move on. I think you guys are all you've mastered chatter now. So there you go. Let's jump into our topic today on building self-knowledge and leadership skills regarding equity and inclusion. So this session can be challenging, okay, as the topics and activities can evoke strong emotions from participants and from your facilitators here. Everyone has unconscious biases, and as leaders, it's important for us to be able to acknowledge that. I know that I do. Visible And invisible identities play an important role in this session, so it's important that we don't make assumptions. I'd ask that we treat each other with a lot of care, and in particular, no one, facilitators or participants, should be asked to speak for a group with which they identify. Our focus should remain on individual experiences and how they shape our shared interactions. So, we're going to start by learning about unconscious biases and their impact. And then we'll look at ways to consciously overcome our biases and strategies for creating more equitable environments. And at the end, you'll have an opportunity to reflect on what you've learned today and to provide some feedback and to help us improve future trainings. Our learning goals are to be able to describe sources of unconscious or implicit assumptions, preconceptions, biases, and prejudices, both for ourselves personally and kind of for people in general, but to also increase our understanding of the impact of unconscious bias, and especially in STEM settings, and to identify strategies for recognizing and addressing issues of equity and inclusion when they arise. So let's try another chatter. Go ahead and type a brief response into the chat, but wait to hit enter. Okay? Answer the question, what is bias? Just type in something brief. Okay. 3, 2, 1, enter.
So we have something you prefer, systematic error, unique perspective, and baggage that it carries, prejudice and preconceived ideas, I know better than you, preference for a particular issue, knowing something before, pre-trained neural nets. Okay, that's getting a little technical here. Being partial, unfair thoughts about another person or topic, one-sidedness, and believing something to be true regardless of facts or evidence. So these are just some of the perspectives that have come in, Karen.
Nice. Those are excellent. So I know in that exercise, you guys have reflected on your own definitions of bias. And this is like a more formal but and very succinct definition. Does this differ from your own definition? And why might that be? But basically, biases are preferences for or against people, groups, things, environments, situations, and etc. And they're formed naturally based on our past experiences and help us to understand and categorize the world around us. There's that positive aspect and kind of what can sometimes be a problematic aspect too. Unconscious bias is a natural result of human evolution. Our brains use past experience to help make decisions about current situations. And this is natural and very unconscious. We're not aware that it's happening, right? Bias is a survival mechanism. The earliest human brains evolved to use shortcuts to help keep us alive, right? Being able to rapidly identify and categorize new stimuli is essential to survival. The earliest humans needed to know fast whether something was a threat. And of course, things happen so quickly now that we tend to keep that behavior going to try to kind of keep up. But our brains down select inputs. It's not possible for our brains to actively process every piece of information that we're exposed to. And as we grow, we naturally start to make assumptions about how the world works. We learn to ignore the way things just are so that we can focus on new or different inputs and experiences, right? For example, we don't actively pay attention to walking up and down a familiar staircase, but we have to watch where we're going on stairs that aren't a familiar size or shape. Similarly, we unconsciously estimate how much force to require to pick up an object, and it can feel awkward to pick up something that's lighter or heavier than expected. And we're also influenced by the people around us. It's natural to assume that familiar people and places are safer than unfamiliar ones, right? And we're born with a natural hesitation to new things. Young children often prefer familiar foods, toys, people, etc. But we can overcome these fears, and it takes conscious effort to be able to recognize them and to be able to have strategies to try to do other things when that's warranted. So, what is unconscious bias? Basically, I want you to think about this in terms of what makes a bias unconscious. If you think you know and you're comfortable, feel free to share either by enabling your microphone or by sharing in the chat.
And before
Just
we dive into unconscious bias, there's a comment saying, hey, are these not artificial bias generated by media? Because I noticed you use the word natural, right?
yeah,
So comments?
Yeah, I actually made that comment.
Yes.
Uh, and a
Hi,
lot of that
Daryl.
is driven. Thank you both for putting this on.
of course.
But as I was reflecting, between our cell phones and TVs, in a lot of ways, we're kind of artificially exposed to an environment that we might not experience under normal circumstances. And I'm just calling out that certainly from my perspective, I feel like media consciously and unconsciously contributes to this. Those are my
So,
thoughts.
so Daryl, I thank you for making that comment.
Yeah.
Thinking back, so I grew up in northern China where when I was growing up, TV was just coming in. But what I remember was even before the TV came in, a lot of the biases that Karen talked about, the hesitation to try new things, concerns or fears about people or things that are different from the ones we were familiar with, those were there. So I'm aligned with her that those are natural. What I do think, though, that I agree with you is TV media uh, have a way of accelerating or expanding that effect. So that's just my perspective. Um, doesn't represent anybody else's.
Yeah.
Karen?
Yes.
Yeah, but thank you for that observation because I think that's important. I guess technically in a virtual way that would be considered part of the social pressures, right?
Mm.
Unbiased, but yeah, it's really profound. And I think because we are exposed to so much of it that we even lose track of the way that it is unconscious, right? Because we feel like it's a conscious decision to participate in these groups and things, right? And to be exposed to some of that. I have to admit, I don't have a TV in my home anymore
Yay.
because I tried it for a while and I ended up really liking it.
And I
So
think many people today are making conscious choices to
yes,
achieve similar effects once they find something that's workable for them. They share their experience, and others may choose to do that or do different things. And Bobby has a comment on unconscious bias. Uh, the mention is unconscious bias is a bias we're not aware is influencing our reactions to events, people, or just things in general. So, Karen, maybe we can move forward to share
yeah,
the definition of what this is.
exactly. An unconscious bias is commonly defined as a preference that forms without conscious thought. Unconscious biases develop from our experiences, and it's natural to develop a preference for familiar people, places, things. And that's called an affinity, similarity, or a like me type of a bias. Um, Unconscious biases are often the source of social stereotypes, particularly when they're based on characteristics like race, gender, ability, age, or physical appearance. Um, yeah, I like that. I've noticed whenever I'm near social media, I tend to get a lot of ads for makeup for aging women, and and I just decided no, I really don't want to see that anymore. So I find ways to change that. I don't want to be exposed to that all the time. And so that's just another way to think about taking control of some of this. But I think those are great points that you guys have made. And let's see. I think I'm going to turn it over to Kathy for this slide if I can.
Sure. Since you're sharing screen, if we can, thank you. So as Karen mentioned, so there's several types of uncommon, there are many different types of common unconscious biases. And here's a few. So we'll kind of talk through them one by one. And one that Karen mentioned is affinity or like me bias. And this is a preference for people who are like you in some way. And I'll give you an example. When meeting a group of people a group of strangers, we naturally gravitate toward the people who look most like us. And you may say, well, I don't do that. You know, I go and meet everybody. There is a lot of effort that put into that. So kudos to you for doing that in an environment. There's implication for each of these biases. So for example, for affinity bias, there's potential implication that in the workplace, it can impact who is selected for interviews, who's given new projects, and who may be hired or promoted. You see, there's a comment in the chat. Phil says, my screen's filled with ads from AI watching my likes. Yes, that happens all the time. If you check that you're interested in a particular type of shoe, the shoes will follow you everywhere. Confirmation bias. It's making new decisions that are aligned with our existing experience or beliefs. As an example, as you were growing up, if your primary caregiver was female or were female, you may be less likely to hire a male babysitter. So that is just something that's unconscious. And in the workplace, confirmation bias can impact how individuals are evaluated and who gets opportunities. So this is got some some similarity to the affinity or like me bias as well. Perception bias. Perception bias occurs when we rely on stereotypes or assumptions instead of facts. I have a personal example. Actually, it's my mom and my sister. They have an example, and they're fine with me using it. So you're in for a treat. When my sister was in elementary school, she attended Boys and Girls Club for after school, and every year the Boys and Girls Club puts together some kind of competition, a celebration day, and they have different games. So when my mom was picking up my sister one day, she noticed there were different games to sign up, and one of them was ping pong challenge. So she asked my sister, should we sign up for this? I said, sure. So they signed up. And a week later, when the game day came, they showed up, and they were the only ones that signed up, and they were automatic winners. And at that point, my sister quietly said to my mom into her ear, I've never played ping pong before. So my mom, of course, she plays ping pong really well. So I hear a laugh over there. So there's a perception bias that because the way we are, there are certain things assumed about us. So the fact is that she never played ping pong before in her life, but it was assumed that since she and my mom signed up, they were probably really good, and others didn't even want to sign up. The potential implication for this kind of bias is that in the workplace, it can prevent us from recognizing and leveraging individuals' actual strengths, or from giving them opportunities to grow in new areas. Because the assumption is like, oh, they're not going to be interested in that. So, or they're not going to be as talented or ready for that. There's also anchor bias. This one's really interesting because when I went through management school, we saw this in full scale play out in negotiations. So anchor bias is when we focus on particular fact, experience, or action and use that as the basis for new decisions or activities, we commonly anchor on the first piece of information we encounter. So you probably have heard of some psychology experiment where someone is given a certain number or anchored number and then ask them to guess what the actual number is. And the guesses usually come back anchored around the number that was given. So, so if a price is shared that started very high, it's likely to lead to a higher final price. Okay? So in the workplace, first impact is often seen, or the impact is often seen in salary negotiations. So starting with a low number that anchors both parties to a lower range, and the final compensation tends to be lower. So what do? There are techniques to wipe the anchor off the table and re-anchor, etc. That's a different talk. So, and blind spot bias is the inability to recognize our own biases, even if we see biases in others. So for example, we're more likely to notice when someone else is making poor decisions. I notice my husband makes a lot of poor decisions, and then when we act in similar ways. And funny enough, he also notices that I make a lot of poor decisions. But when it comes to ourselves, it's more difficult to notice that than noticing it in others. So what that may mean is blind spots biases may lead us to judge others' work even more critically than our own. So there you have it. These are a few common unconscious biases. Back to you, Karen.
Thank you so much. And, particularly I can hit on perception bias quickly too, being named Karen and a librarian. So usually I bring that up when I'm doing orientations and things because I'm hoping that it kind of suggests to people that I'm in on it. But I don't know. It's been a bit of a challenge in the last few years. So now I want to turn our attention to understanding the impact of these biases. And our learning goals here are to examine the sources, where we get them from, understanding the impact of unconscious bias, and to identify some concrete actions we can take to help us learn about them and address those issues. So all of us have unconscious biases. They're based on our experiences and background. The researchers at Harvard University spent many years figuring out how to uncover individuals' unconscious biases, and they created a number of implicit association tests that could be taken online by anyone. And we'll share that URL with you later. We just don't want you to take a look at those now. These tests measure individuals' instinctual reactions to various stimuli, like photos, images, words, and etc. And the goal is really to help participants identify and measure their own unconscious biases. So taking these implicit assumptions tests can reveal uncomfortable truths, and they can lead to confusion, particularly when our unconscious biases don't align with our conscious beliefs. I've noticed that about myself. It sometimes takes me a while to just live with something and start really watching my behaviors in that area, and it creates discomfort for me, right? Because I'm wondering something about the way I behave and the way others might perceive me and things like that. And it can cause discomfort for a while. It's very common for someone to actively value diversity, but to discover unconscious biases when they take these implicit assumption tests. But the key is to use the test results to try to understand yourself better, right? What about your own background might have led you to develop that unconscious bias? And I want to share just a really quick synopsis of my own learning in this area. In that great team-based environment in Arizona, I had an employee whose name was Becky, and I checked with her to share this story. She was visibly disabled. She used a scooter to get around, and she shared with me early on that she had multiple sclerosis. After about 6 months, she asked if she could be excused from attending our team meetings because they exhausted her. My solution was to change the location of our meetings so that she didn't have to travel to a different floor, but we began meeting in a conference room right off of our workplace. And after about 3 months, she shared with me that that wasn't really working for her either. She was still exhausted. The head of HR also kind of talked with us, and we ended up excusing her from team meetings, which, kind of frustrated me because I felt that we were really missing out on her valuable contributions. But um, she did eventually leave work and go on permanent disability, which I also felt very bad about. But cue to about 6 months later, I had moved to a different job. I was living in Seattle, and I got my own diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. I had almost no disability. No one would have noticed it in my day-to-day actions at all. But I suddenly did have episodes about mid-afternoon, not every day, but once in a while, of being extraordinarily exhausted. And I kind of developed my own ways to deal with it. I actually did figure out a way to take a quick nap at my desk, which, is always of a big concern to you when your employer might be involved, in seeing that sort of a thing. Sometimes I just grab a real high protein snack or something, and it just goes away. It doesn't happen often, and I don't feel that it interrupts my work life at all. But then I thought back about Becky, and I thought that because she had a visible disability, I had assumed that she was physically exhausted. And I think if I talked to her again today, it might have been more that she was just emotionally about what was going on in the meeting, or like cognitively or mentally exhausted. But until I experienced that myself, it never occurred to me that someone could actually be going through that. And as a leader, I really should have explored that more with Becky as an individual. And perhaps we could have developed other possible strategies. I feel like I let her down, but it had a really impact on my learning and how I treated others, and how I've kind of tried to perpetuate that learning in my career and in my leadership practice. Um, we do have an activity here that I think I'm just going to have to shorten. We're a little bit behind on time, so I'm just going to scoot us through it really quickly. But I'm kind of wondering about your immediate impressions of these faces. Which faces look trustworthy to you? Just kind of think to yourself, and why do you think that might be with some of these traits and trends that you're associating with these faces? I know Kathy shared with me in a recent UK study that people were shown videos of a variety of people, both men and women, and then asked who was the astronaut, the surgeon, the firefighter. And the participants almost always indicated that men had those careers. And I just want you to think about that. And the implication there for STEM careers, for other people being in STEM careers. So just kind of something to think about. But there's a lot of current research that demonstrates that unconscious biases are pervasive in STEM. Those biases have negative impacts on the participation and success of individuals from groups that are underrepresented in STEM. And again, implicit biases are held by everyone, regardless of whether they identify themselves as members of minority or majority groups. These biases are about who should be part of STEM and often rooted in childhood experiences. So it's something for us to just be particularly conscious of. Recent research shows that unconscious biases still have significant impacts on individuals' experiences and participation in STEM, particularly gender stereotypes influence perceptions that men belong in STEM, but women don't. And unconscious biases about a range of factors impact how healthcare providers make decisions and the outcomes for their patients. I know health disparity is a big issue in Detroit. Many studies have demonstrated that unconscious biases impact how reviewers perceive the competence and suitability of employment applicants. And particularly the gendered wording in job ads. Different words are commonly used to describe men or women, and sometimes these differences are pejorative. A man might be described as confident, where a woman might be described as bossy in the same context. And at other times, the differences are much more subtle. A man might be described as competent, while a woman is described as compassionate. Both are positive descriptors, but they can be expressed differently based on preconceived notions about gender differences. Unconscious biases still have significant impacts on individuals' experiences and participation in STEM. And some, let me see here what I've got. I think we're going to go right into our activity and take a look at this. What we're going to do is put you in breakout rooms, and the person whose first name comes first alphabetically will be the timekeeper. We want you to review the different job descriptions from the participant materials, and there's the tiny URL again if you still need it. Focus on the language describing the responsibilities and requirements of the position, and particularly pay attention to the action or descriptive words, okay, that kind of jump out at you. Within your small group, discuss the job advertisements and which words feel masculine or feminine to you and why. What words might encourage or discourage applicants? Why would that be? And what changes, if any, might make these job ads appeal to a broader audience? And then at the end of the activity, we'll return you to the large group. I think we're going to go ahead and give you about 8 minutes to work on this. So please wait to be assigned to a breakout room, and
Okay.
you'll get the countdown when the rooms are getting ready to close, I think 60 seconds before they end.
All right. So let's get people into rooms.
Maybe, do I need to stop sharing it?
Is someone already assigning people to rooms? Because the number of participants are changing fast.
Yeah, they just dropped like flies.
I know.
Assigned to a room that.
Okay. Dan, are you there? Okay, breakout rooms. So we have 60 and let's do 10. Okay. So are people being assigned? Hello, hello.
Looks like it popped up on me. People
Yes.
are assigned to the rooms, yes.
Perfect. Perfect.
But you've got some rooms that only have one person in them. Do you want me to move? Because people haven't joined the rooms they've been assigned. Do you want me to move that one person to a different room? Oh, never mind. Somebody else joined in.
Yeah, let's see. So they should each have.
Yes, but the problem is that not everybody who's assigned a room actually goes in.
I see. I see. So if you pay attention to rooms 1 through 5, I'll take a look at 6 through the rest. Thank you, Henry.
Yeah. But do you
So
want me to shift people around to try and get it
yes,
roughly
please.
equal?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Okay, so this I am in room, where am I? Which room am I in?
Right now, you're not in any of them.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Let me go join a room and say hello and all that. So I'll join room 1. Yes.
No, good her. Because you know what? I'm gonna pit the two of you against each other, and right now, she's my favorite. Was it stinky, Claire? Okay, Alex, you're gonna have to try harder. Let me squeeze you. Let me squeeze you. Really? It smells to me. Like in general, or you're sick right now? You basically have no sense of smell? So you have a lot of allergies.
So I looked into breakout rooms 1, 2, and 3. And they're
Okay.
doing okay. I'm gonna go check on 4, 5. Yeah, I'm gonna check on 4. 4 has a few people.
Yeah, I checked on the ones that had under
Have you
5.
not been paying attention? Yeah. Are we ready to come back?
Think we're getting close.
Okay, yell and
But the-
scream when you're ready for me to shut down the rooms.
Okay. Um, let me check on one and we'll see how far they are in just a minute. We're doing okay on time, so I'm like,
So I messed up something. Okay, thank you.
Anything significant go wrong?
yeah, can you go ahead and start the countdown to bring people back? I think most of them have been making pretty good progress.
Like 1 minute kind of thing?
Yeah, that would
Okay.
be great. Hello there. Is everyone back?
We are still increasing in numbers, but we seem to be stable.
Okay.
We did lose a few people as soon as we said we're going to assign people to groups, but the brave souls all stayed.
Yeah, and I heard some great conversations going on.
I think we needed more time. We only got
Yeah.
I know.
double the time for that.
Well, and I don't know that the goal is to really finish with that one. It's to just kind of start noticing, and you'll start noticing it when you read any job ad, actually. Plus, it strikes people really differently, right? Let's just do a really quick chatter here on what did you learn? What did you notice about your own reaction to this exercise?
And it's okay if you didn't, if there was some struggle to notice things
Yes.
as well, because a lot of this could be unconscious, and it may just seem natural. So, for the people who did notice things, can you please share some? We had multiple rooms, and so do we have a volunteer to share from your discussions?
I can share okay.
Please. I heard
Katrina.
several points in the room that Smita and Mary and a few others were in. Go ahead, Smita.
Yeah. So we discussed about the research scientist one, and we were thinking about some of the extra words like rigorous in the job responsibilities, and many other words like that. Like some places there is a passion for personal and team development, the passion, coachable and committed. So certain extra words that we thought, and the commitment also we thought passion, and then there is coachable and committed. So we thought that could be some of the things can put some people off, like the rigorous or commitment. Like some people have commitment to their family, they may have children and small children, and that means, are you committed completely to your work at the cost of your family? We thought those words could be may not encourage certain people to apply.
So there's one perspective that's what the intent of writing certain words that may have certain biases, and there's also the interpretation of that may the receiver may have certain unconscious biases. So we're going for a double whammy there. Thank you, Smita, for sharing. And Karen, I also see a couple of hands up. Did you want to comment before we call on the next person?
No, let's go ahead and take questions. I think these observations are great.
Yes, Eric, do you want to?
Well, this wasn't a question. It was just an observation that we had. Our group found, as the job descriptions went 1, 2, 3, 4, they got less and less focused on having a requirement to have like a PhD in a certain field, is what I thought. Because honestly, when you're hiring, I find that having experience is experience. And so requiring to have, especially since we were talking about how STEM can be perceived as having more male people, requiring a degree in a specific field is maybe not as valuable as experience in a field.
That's
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
And we also have John.
Well, I had raised my hand because I was going to volunteer to talk on behalf of our group.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, the thing that our group noticed is that there were a number of terms in here that sort of applied to sports teams. And traditionally, basically in management training, we're taught not to use sports analogies in business because not everyone has the same, relationship to sports. So, for example, the first one uses the word coachable, which clearly brings up a sports analogy and team and teamwork. So that's sort of what our team focused on.
That's fascinating. That's a really,
And there's a comment in the chat that talks about how most of the bias perceived from the job postings where the reader side, the that's introduced to the bias. Coachable was even contradictory to the rest of the description that they wanted. Thank you, Brian.
Good point.
So, there's definitely a lot of perceived biases, as well as people who may have a blind spot as they are writing these. They may notice in other people's descriptions, but not in their own. Their own is perfect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, back to you, Karen.
So I do want to show you some results here. The thing is, there's no right answers here. Okay. These are the results of analyzing the job advertisement from an activity using a decoding tool. And we're going to give you that in the last slide so that you can take a look at that if you want to. But the goal of this activity is not to get the right results. There are no right results, right? But to just think about how unconscious biases can creep into influencing our workplaces and the work that we do. Individual experiences can just vary, and you may not agree with the information provided here. So let me see what else here. I'm going to go ahead and move on at this point. Let's see.
Just a time check, 18 minutes
Yeah,
till
that's what I'm
top of the
that's
hour.
exactly what I was thinking about. So
Yes.
some bias busting strategies are
Do you want to
basically
share screen? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Oh,
We
and it
love
isn't.
looking at you, but we also would like to see the content.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, all of a sudden, I'm tripped up. Let's go.
That's all right. So while she's doing that, David mentioned in the chat that their group found researcher scientist number 1 used a lot of aggressive language and focused on somewhat contradictory character traits like qualifications. Later job descriptions focus more on experience and use less aggressive language. So aggressive isn't a trait that any specific group can lack for Bobby. So again, no right or wrong answers. And I wish we had more time to discuss this, but we're back to the agenda. And I think if we get to the
thanks so much.
Let's get to the
That's what I was thinking. There's a great exercise in here, and we're lagging just a little bit behind. We're going to go ahead and move into ethics quickly, if I can here. Let me see.
If we had a speed up 1.25x button, like in YouTube for you.
That's right.
Just kidding.
Well, you also want to do the brain dump, right? But I'm pointing out, I guess, there's good materials here if you want to get back to these slides. I think you guys really got a lot out of that exercise, so I loved your observations. So training your hiring committee, increasing your candidate pool, kind of not looking at just conventional metrics like having a PhD or GPAs, and then having structured interviews. I got a lot of learning out of this because we do need to remember that some candidates are helped by having questions in advance, and probably providing questions in advance as well as an in the moment sort of a response during interviews would be a great idea, right? To give everybody a chance to excel in their preferred modes. I kind of like that one. So now we want to get into leading with ethics. And the learning goals here are so that you can identify sources of ethical issues and to become familiar with your own disciplinary codes of ethics and codes of ethics in general. They tend to have a lot in common. To be able to talk about them and then practice applying that ethical decision making. There are some great situationals here that kind of point up the fact that ethics are both about character, what we kind of feel is appropriate and right and fair, as opposed to being self-centered, being able to look at others and observing their behavior. And then, so we have things that we consider good character. And then there's another dilemma that we've got here that I'm moving through really quickly. And this is something when you're first getting a job, you notice the colleagues around you, and you begin to expand your experience based on what you see among them and what you talk about with them. You learn what's expected, what's appropriate, and how to get information or help. All right. That tends to be more kind of moral decision making. on what's appropriate. Um, and indeed, I had a lot to talk about with the American Library Association Code of Ethics, but I'm not going to go into that right now. But we have to be careful about the materials that we're selecting and the sorts of things that uh, teach us how to make ethical decisions in our jobs. We select materials, so that's a very important thing for us to be able to do. We aim for balanced collections, but we also have patrons asking for things, so we want to be responsive to those. But the fact is, ethical decision making can be taught. Um, it includes knowledge about ethical issues, actual skills in talking about them, resolving conflict, etc., being open and willing to engage in ethical decision making, and then basically modeling ethical conduct for others, especially as leaders. So I'm going to go ahead and these are kind of guidelines for ethical decision making. I don't think you'll find them far afield for what you use for any decision. Okay. Define the problem, look for relevant information and assistance, both from people and from things like codes of ethics, maybe even articles. Identify potential outcomes and evaluate those alternatives, identifying the ethical impacts. You make your decision, you implement it, and then basically you evaluate it, and especially for any ethical issues that you think are going far afield. So what I want
Hey,
to do
Karen,
right,
since we are moving quickly, are we going to share the materials in addition to the links that are present on the pages?
yeah, I think I want to move right into the, whoops, I'm sorry, previous slide here.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and include the participant materials again. I believe that's where the Code of Ethics review is. I think for this we use the Code of Ethics for ACM. What we want you to do is quickly review the computing Code of Ethics, read the disciplinary case study, and discuss the questions after the case study. This will take us right into 1 o'clock, I think, close to, but we'll try to bring you back. So let's go ahead and break out people into the rooms and try to get some things done. Same rooms as before, if we can do it that way.
I'm not sure we can do that.
Okay.
Henry, I don't have the assign people to group option currently.
Historically we've only done random assignment because the labor cost of doing targeted assignment is very high.
It's high. Okay, yeah, no, let's just go ahead and I'm sure we can all discuss perfectly effectively with each other.
Henry, can you assign people? I don't have that option since
Yeah,
I
give me a
don't either.
minute and I'll get that going.
Thank you. While that's going, and Smith-Dow asked if we will be sharing the slides. Karen.
Um, I think all of the slides for all of the sessions are in the same place in the um,
Materials.
virtual materials. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Sorry, words
No
are
worries.
failing me right now.
No problem. And there are comments about character traits don't seem like job application and job qualifications. And then narrowing the applicant pool is a goal of the job posting. So it is to specify skill set and describe duties, including personality traits that the hiring body has identified will lead to success in that role. So I see a point.
Ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
We're good. Thanks.
Folks in the main Zoom room, please go to your assigned breakout room.
The groups that I've been in are actually being pretty productive and really moving through things. So at least they're familiar with the exercise, and I think they kind of know uh, what the issues are that are being discussed. So let's kind of give it another minute and then bring them back in another minute, and we'll just do the very last chatter, and I think we'll be fine. Can we go ahead and start the 60-minute countdown to close the rooms?
Yeah, I'll send a message.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Yeah. And then we'll just do the very last chatter.
I think we're back.
Yes, hello there. This is great. I am going to go ahead and start our slide share really quick. And we've only got a couple of minutes here. So, ooh, I don't know where I am now. Sorry about that. Rather
That's all
than
right.
asking you what you learned, I think at this point I want you to look at the whole last session. So both the ethics part and the uh, inclusion section, and just kind of think about what one thing will you try to do or change, make as a learning goal, or incorporate into your daily practice.
Just to add to what Karen's saying, it's one thing to become aware of what these things are and what examples you might have seen. It's very directly um, impactful to understand what you're going to do differently, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
everybody type into the chat and then don't hit enter yet. So just type, and we're going to have another 15, 20 seconds for you to do that. And we're going to hit enter in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, 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 go. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. So be more
Cool.
aware of professional ethical guidelines that can help with ethical problems. Ethics of preserving privacy and confidentiality completely outweigh the pursuit of technically correct solution. Aligned. I would be conscious of the impact on others, even if it may have negative impact. Speak with colleagues, especially those with other walks of life, experience, or recognize if any bias is occurring on job descriptions and other communication materials. Need more time to process. That is completely fine.
I'm with you.
Reflect on accessibility. Wonderful. Blind spot bias. I will attempt to be more aware that what I see in others, and they could see similar things in me too. Absolutely. Review the codes again to keep formalized version in mind and biases. A general increase in awareness toward bias and feeling placed on issues by a variety of people. And pay attention to the text, also to the context and intent with which it was written. I preach to students to put details into their resumes to overcome AI bias. Test both manually and through automation to compare what's leading to the mix-up and then adhere to the ethical guidelines without any bias. I think it's going to be very challenging to go without any bias, but to become aware and to minimize the negative impact of bias. That would be very good for everyone. So back to you, Karen.
In closing for this, I would just say that this kind of learning, noticing, and responding in your environment is a learning process and it's ongoing. So, look at things you're noticing in your environment. Yes, examine yourself, examine the other people around you. Try to engage with a trusted friend. Sometimes they're the greatest observers and can gently and tactfully suggest things to you or notice things. So you guys have been great. Thank you so much for engaging. Yeah.
And if you have any last question for the group, for Karen, for myself, for the quiet volunteers in the background, Henry, Dan, and others, please go ahead and put it in the chat. We're not going to count down, so put whatever you want. So I see this is a journey, definitely not something that can be overcome in a 75-minute Zoom. I'm looking forward to continuing my education in the realm. Great talk. Thank you. Thank you. Session could be twice as long. We can make it 5 times as long. Our preparation was longer than this. Thank you very much. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to make this happen. And Karen?
Yeah, just thank you. If you have any observations about the program itself, just maybe sending them to Dirk or Katie Colbury would probably be the most effective way to have them implemented in future sessions. So thank you all for your attention and participation. Really appreciate it.
All right. Make it a great day, everyone, and enjoy summer, whether it's your favorite season or not.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Karen and Kathy. I'm going to stop the recording now.